Good morning. Good to see you. Man, I just love when the band is up here and just pouring out their hearts. Isn't that just awesome to see? Can you give them a round of applause so they can hear it as they're exiting in the back there? I love too, what I really love is to know these people. You know, Michael's over here leading us in song, right? And he's just belting it out. You can see the emotion. You can see how much the truth means to him. But Michael is not, a professional. It's not what he does for his living. In fact, Michael was just at my house like 2 weeks ago playing Star Wars Trivia Pursuit with me, right? And Michael and I almost had the greatest comeback in Star Wars trivia history. But we didn't. We lost to my wife and his wife. But we're not going to talk about that. I'm not wounded by it. I'm not hurt by it. I don't feel like I'm no longer a Star Wars fan. But it's just great to know these people's stories, their lives, what they've lived, and then to have them up here encouraging us to sing. To me, it's just such a rewarding experience. I hope you appreciate all the time and the effort the band puts in just making these sets for us. And they're for us. You know, not just for us to watch, but for us to be led into. It's just an awesome experience that they usher us into. And we hope that you are experiencing something that is different than your normal everyday week. We want a transcendent experience. We want a sacred experience. We want a conversation with God this morning. That's the bar that we set at Knott Avenue Christian Church, is that God would speak to us in a very personal and a very passionate way. And we believe that happens because we are faithful to this book right here. That when we open up this book, God speaks to us. And whatever's going on in our week, your week looks different than my week, but God is here to meet both of us, to speak to both of us, and to help us make a better step toward Him. So I hope you're ready for that encounter. We're closing off our series in the book of Daniel, and we're calling our series, or have been calling our series, Living in Babylon. Not something that just Daniel did, but something as followers of Jesus Christ in America, we need to do. Because we are living in a Babylon, if you will. We're living in a foreign land. American values and Christian values seem to be distancing themselves from each other, moving away from each other. And I said a couple weeks ago that we can argue about how big is the distance, right? What's the length of that and the speed at the movement. We can argue that and share our opinions about that, but everybody can acknowledge that there is some distance. There is some movement. Well, how do we live faithful in our foreign land, in America? I want to wrap up this series asking this question. How do we handle the unanswered questions? How do we handle those, what I like to call them, the road trip questions? I just experienced these, not this Friday, but 2 Fridays ago, October 11th, when I went on a road trip with my kids. So I'm going to take my kids up north. We're going to go to this retirement celebration, which I am really, really excited about. I've been looking forward to. It's going to be a quick trip. We leave Friday, come back Sunday. I was going to take my kids out of school at about 11 o'clock around lunchtime, and we're going to drive up north. My 2 big kids are going to meet my wife and my youngest son in Northern California, and we're going to have a great little weekend up north. I get a call at 7 o'clock in the morning, and my wife says, "Babe, I don't know if you're going to be able to make it. There's a fire that's blocked the 5, so the 5 is shut down. Are you sure you still want to come?" So I go on Waze and I try to figure it out, and my 8-hour trip turns into a 10.5-hour trip, right? I got to add 100 miles to my trip in order to get up there. And she says, "Do you still want to go?" I said, "Absolutely, I still want to go." So I go to my kids and I say, "Kids, I got good news and I got bad news. Okay, good news is you don't have to go to school today." Yay! No, they love learning. They're like, "No, Daddy, please give me homework." No, they're excited about it. Okay, the other good news is we're still going to Nona's and Papa's house. You're going to have fun. You're going to see the cows, ride the, little dirt bikes. You're going to have fun. But the bad news is it's going to take us about 2.5 more hours. It's going to take us about 100 more miles. It's going to be a long trip. And saying that to my kids, I just anticipate driving that trip by myself and getting those questions. How long? Why are we going this way? Are the most popular of the road trip questions. Are we there yet? Has to be the most inhumane question you can ever ask a person driving a car, right? That phrase has never been helpful in the history of the world. Not for Christopher Columbus, right? Not for any explorer, not for any parent in a minivan. Are we there? That is the most useless question ever. It's like Chinese water torture, right? That's the drop of water on your head. for hours and hours and hours, and you just want to drive the car into the embankment. No, I'm just kidding, right? But that question, it just gets to you. Now we do this in our life, right? We find ourselves in our lives in road trip type moments where the journey is long and the journey is hard, and we're asking ourselves, why do we go this way, God? Or how long is the trip going to be, God? Or are we there yet, God? All these unanswered questions. We find ourselves in those moments all the time where uncertainty surrounds us and we'd love a little bit more knowledge, a little more foresight, but God doesn't give it. Well, what do we do in those moments? Daniel finds himself in that type of moment in the last chapter of the book of Daniel. And here's the lesson I think Daniel learns, the principle that God teaches him, and I think it's a principle that we can learn to help us live in our foreign land, to be faithful as we have the unanswered road trip questions of our life. How long? Why? Are we there yet? God, is this going to be done soon? So take the pen out of the seat back in front of you. I want you to find that spot in your bulletin. There's a box called the Big Idea box. We like to have one big idea that we give out to you every Sunday. And so on the first page there, the big idea that you're going to put in that box is this: obedience before answers. Obedience before answers. Now, we really like to flip the order there. God, give me all the answers, then I'll be obedient. But if you've been a Christian for 2 weeks or 25 years or whatever it is, you know that's not how God works. In fact, I always feel that God hardly gives me the answers, but he does give me commands, and he does expect obedience even when I have questions. So let me show you the kind of road trip that Daniel goes on. Go to Daniel chapter 12, the closing of the book of Daniel. What's going to happen is this Daniel's going to see a vision, his culminating vision, his last vision. And in his last vision, he's going to get what I gave to my kids. Hey guys, I got some good news and I got some bad news. We're going to go on this road trip. Let me tell you how the road trip is going to end. We're going to go to Nona's and Papa's house. And you're going to see the cows. You're going to see the chickens. You're going to ride the dirt bike. You're going to do all that fun stuff. But it's going to take us a long time to get there. It's going to be a hard road. So that's the bad news. And that good news and bad news is going to create a tension for Daniel, a conflict, if you will. He's going to feel unsettled. He's not going to feel comfortable. And in that state, he's going to do what my kids did in the back seat. He's going to ask a bunch of questions. And I think just like I did to my kids, so too God does to us. We don't answer those questions. There are sometimes I tell my kids, yeah, we got about an hour and a half left. There are sometimes I tell them, yeah, we had to make a right turn because of this fire. There's a reason we're on the 99, not the 5. Sometimes I give them the answers, but most of the time, I don't give them the answers. They don't need the answers. They just need to obey. They need to love each other and not argue over what side of the seat the other one is on. Let me show you this. This is the road trip for Daniel. Daniel chapter 12. Let's look at first the good news and the bad news. God fast forwards history for him and shows, here's the road trip of humanity. Here's how it's going to end. Okay, look at verse 1. It says, and at that time shall arise Michael, the great prince. This is the kind of a guardian angel of God's people, the one who combats evil forces, demonic forces. We see his battle in Revelation chapter 12. He fights the dragon. He fights Satan. And his job is to protect and preserve God's people, not to keep them from problems, but to get them through problems. So we have this character who comes out and he's in a battle, a spiritual battle, trying to preserve the people of God. So Michael, the prince who has charge over your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never been since there was a nation till that time. Now just stop right here. Just think of what you know so far of Daniel and his life and his timeline. He was just told some really bad news. It's going to get worse than it's ever been before. It's going to get harder than it's ever been before. We've never seen trouble like this. What's coming is the worst of it. Now think about if you're Daniel. Daniel at this point is probably about 90 years old. He's lived in captivity for about 80 years, maybe 75 years, something like that, because he was taken when he was a teenager. He was ripped from his homeland. His parents were probably killed or at least put into slavery. He was separated from any of his other family members. He was taken and put into a place and taught about pagan ideology, taught about different things. He was just inundated with a culture that was not bowing a knee to God. At one point, this conflict arose where his friends were thrown in a fiery furnace because they wouldn't worship like the king wanted them to worship. In fact, Daniel would find himself at one point under the persecution of the king. The king unknowingly made a decree that forced Daniel to be thrown into a pit of lions. Has it been good for Daniel? No, that's a terrible life to live. Now, he's been faithful, he's been obedient, but he hasn't been comfortable. So imagine if you're Daniel. You're 90 years old this time. You've just been waiting for your people to go back to their homeland. And they're going back, but you can't go back with them. You can't make the trip. They're all leaving, and as they're leaving, you watch them leave, and you pray as they leave. As you see them journey, you watch the city you can't go to, the people you can't join, and you're praying for them. And then you get this vision. The vision says, you think this is bad? Oh, it's going to get way worse. You think an 8-hour road trip is hard to deal with? Let's add another 100 miles on top of that. Would you be encouraged if you were Daniel? No, you'd be discouraged. God, what's your deal? Why this long? Have you ever felt like that? Like maybe you feel like your Christian character can have some sort of resolve or endurance and a burden's been placed on you. And you feel like you're doing pretty good. Whether it's a diagnosis or you got laid off or whatever it is, and you're still finding yourself to be faithful. Even though things are uncertain, even though things are chaotic, even though there's just chaos around you. You feel like, you know what, Paul, I'm doing good right now. And then what happens? When you feel like you're doing good, bam, another one hits you. Bigger than the other ones. And you get to the point like, God, I'm already learning my lesson. I'm already relying on you. And now you leave me here? Very discouraging. There's bad news, but there's good news. All right, look at how it will end. Yes, there's going to be a terrible time, verse 2. We're halfway through verse 1, starting with but. But at that time, your people shall be delivered. Everyone whose name will be found written in the book. So you're going to make it. You're going to cross the finish line. It says, and many of those who sleep in dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. What does he describe there? Let me tell you how this thing's going to end. Daniel, your people are going to make it. Yeah, the road trip is not fun, but you'll make it. And when you get to the end, it will be glorious. It will be everlasting. He says, even this thing that we feel is so permanent called death is actually sleep. Do you notice that, how he uses that language? Why would he talk about death as sleep? It's because there's something similar in the description of death and the description of sleep in the Christian mindset. And that is what? It's temporary. We awake from it. We don't just experience the afterlife, but we experience life after the afterlife. We don't just pass to death, we pass through death. So there'll be a resurrection. And when you're resurrected, it'll be everlasting blessings. You will shine like the brightness of the stars. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to be glowing? You're going to be like a glowworm? You remember those? Children of the 80s, right? Remember those glowworms? Is that what it means, that our appearance is just going to shine? I don't think that's what it's talking about. What I think it's talking about is our bodies will be glorious. There'll be grandeur to them. John describes in his book, in the last book of the Bible, when he sees a vision in Revelation chapter 22, he says, the one who comes to deliver us is like the morning star. John also says when he writes to the church in 1 John, he says, when we see him, we will be like him. What is he saying? Our bodies are going to be as glorious, or in a sense, similar to the glory and the beauty of the resurrected Jesus Christ. What his body looked like, with scars that were healed, a body that wasn't bound by physical limitations, a body that was glorious. We will be like that. Now that feels relieving, doesn't it? Like, okay, it's going to get really, really bad, and it's not going to be fun. It's going to be worse than you've ever experienced. Forget the lion's den. Forget the fire. It's going to be worse, but you'll make it. And when you make it, it'll be awesome. Now, there is a flip side to that. You saw that. That there is a glorious end that Daniel has promised. But Daniel also sees that there's a not so glorious end for many others. He says some will rise to an everlasting blessing, but others will rise to everlasting shame and contempt. What does that mean? Well, shame is about what the person feels. There's very much a real sense that the Bible says when God is ending all things, he will resurrect everybody. Everybody who has lived will live again in a resurrected way. And they'll stand before him, and they'll see him either as Father or they'll see him as Judge. And if we look at him and see him as Judge, we will feel shame. There will be a weightiness to our guilt, a weightiness to our regret. We will wear it, and it'll be a burden to us. That's the idea. That we'll stand before God, and the guilt and the shame of our sin will weigh us down. There's a shame there. Now, the next word is an even harder word to deal with. Contempt. What does that mean? It's not about what that person feels before God. It's what everybody around them feels as they're watching them in shame. The idea of contempt is this: it's hard to watch your fate. I had a buddy who just shared with us a video. That was back when he was like 17 years old and he was riding a skateboard, and he decided it'd be a great idea to get his buddy's car, put the car in front of him, hold onto the back of the bumper, and drive 35 miles per hour as he's on his skateboard. Sounds like a great idea, right? I'm not going to say that person happens to go to our church currently now and works with our student ministry. But let's say he does. I'm not going to name any names, although I really, really want to. Right? But I'd never seen this video, so I watched this video, and there's a part of you see his little face in the back, and he's like smiling, you know? Then all of a sudden, whoop, he's gone. Where did he go? He met the asphalt. He's wham, slams his head, and he's just like not moving. And you're watching the video, and you're like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, is he okay? And the funny thing is, he's sitting in my living room. Yeah, of course he's okay. But part of me thought, that's an imposter, because that kid that I just saw, he's dead. Like, he's not coming back. There was a part of me that was like, I can't watch. So as we're sharing this video, a couple of the people in the living room are like, I don't want to watch this. What's the idea there? The idea there is I can't see it. It hurts me to watch. That's the idea here. As these people are standing before God as Judge, and they're wearing that shame, they're wearing that guilt, they feel the pressure of their sin. Justice is falling on them, and there's no evidence to be given that will give a verdict to the contrary, that they are innocent or that they are righteous. As we're watching this fate, and as they're sentenced to their fate, those onlookers see it, and it hurts to watch. That's the idea. Friend, that is a scary end. And we have to be honest with ourselves, real with ourselves, and be fair and real with the Scriptures. The Scriptures describe a very unglorious end for many in human history that do not bow to Jesus Christ, that do not see him as Father, that do not call him Lord, will see him as Judge. And they will wear their shame for eternity. And their future will be one that is hard to look at. It is hard to see. We will turn away and we will cringe. Now, I think Daniel may see this as kind of a vindication for his people. As they have suffered, as they've been hurt, as they've been persecuted and oppressed, there's a sense that God is balancing the scales, that those who have hurt them are now facing judgment. So this is still seen, even though it's hard to see, it's still seen as a glorious end, because it's not as if sin or hell is a sinful thing. No, hell is how God handles sin. It is a justice thing. It is not a terrible thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not a moral evil. In fact, it's a moral right. for God to do. He is balancing the scales. He is writing history. The world that is turned in favor of the wicked is now turned in the favor of God's righteousness and justice. He's going to close the story. And Daniel's people are going to make it. And those who have oppressed his people will finally face justice. But he gets the picture of the end. Now still, I think Daniel is weighed down by, but God, this is still hard. Yeah, you told me there's a road trip and it's going to end well. We're going to get to Nona and Papa's house. We're going to see the cows and see the chickens and ride the dirt bikes. But it's still going to be long. And as Daniel is having this vision, he's in the company of angels. And one of the angels feels the same way I think that Daniel does. Angels don't know everything. And so one of the angels asks a road trip-like question. He says, hold on, how long is this going to be? Let me show you this. Jump to verse 5. But then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others stood, one on this bank of the stream, and one on that bank of the stream. So kind of opposite sides of this stream, this river, where the vision has taken place, starting in chapter 10. Verse 6. And someone said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream, I think this is Jesus Christ. So an angel is now asking Jesus, as all these things have played out, here's his question. How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? Notice what he says, not when will this stuff happen? That's always our question. Like, when is God going to come back? When is Jesus going to come back? When is he going to just wipe away all the injustice? When is he going to right things? But Daniel's been told that things are going to get a lot worse and they're going to be very hard for his people. So the angel says, I don't care when it comes. I want to know how long is it going to be? I don't know if I can make it. I don't know if they can make it. And look at what Jesus, I think, answers. And I heard the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the stream. He raised his right hand and his left hand towards the heaven and swore by him who lives forever that would be for a time, times, and half a time, that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things would be finished. Okay, so he gets an answer, but it's not a very great one. He says time, times, and half a time. If you kind of compile that answer with what we know from the rest of the Bible, so 3.5 years. 3.5 year. Time is 1, times, that's 2, so 1 plus 2 is... Okay, don't teach my daughter mathematics because you're not going to do so good right now. Okay, so 3 and then half a time. So 3.5 years, this is how it's going to happen. But notice what he says. How do we know the end happens? When the people of God are shattered. This is terrible news. Why can't we just win in the end? Here's what he says. He says, basically, when you think there's no hope, when you have nowhere to look but up, then I'll come. When every venue you've explored, every option you've explored, every advantage you've explored, you used all your resources, when you are on E, I'm going to show up. Man, that's not the answer you want. So here's what Daniel says. Pressed down by this. Okay, this is going to be long. The road trip's going to be long. We're going to have to add another 100 miles. We're going to have to add another 2.5 hours. We're going to have to go around the fires. Okay, we're going to get there, but it's going to be long. It's a long trip. And Daniel just breaks and says, why, God? Well, what's the purpose of all this? Why make us go through all this? Why wait till we're shattered, till we're destroyed, till we have nothing left, so there's no power in us, to where it looks like we are down for the count? We've hit the bottom, of the ring. We're on the floor, and the ref's at the 9 count. Why then do you lift us up? Why? This is when God's answer is kind of going to retreat, where he's not going to tell him everything. He's not going to unfold his plan. He's not going to give him all the reasons why. Look what he tells him to do. First, Daniel's response, his question, right? His version of a road trip question, verse 8. And I heard, but I did not understand. Have you been there before? All right, God, I hear you, but I have no idea what you're doing. I don't really like what you're doing. If I were doing it, I would do it a different way. God, I don't understand. I'm confused. Right? I heard and I did not understand. Then I said, oh Lord, what shall be the outcome of these things? He's saying there, it's a question of purpose. Why would you do this? What are you hoping to accomplish? What does this get you? Why do you have to wait so long? Why? And then look at what God responds. I think this is hilarious. Verse 10, this deep, profound questions. God, help me just dive into the mysteries of your sovereignty, your providential arrangement, your planning of things. God, open up the curtain. Let me see your transcendent mind. Let me know your omniscience. God says, go your way, Daniel. Well, that was disappointing. What does he say? Just get out of here. Now, I don't think that's what he's saying. He's not saying go away. Like, that's what I say. When my kids ask why, just go away. Just go to your room. I don't want to hear, well, why, Daddy? Just go away. Where do babies come from? Go away. Right? Those questions come, you just want to push them away. Is that what God is asking Daniel? You know what? I don't want to hear this right now. I'm up in heaven. I'm cooking for these angels. I'm afraid this is going to burn. Will you just go? That's not God. Right? That's us. I can't juggle all this stuff going on. Dexter's just pooped in the bath. I'm heating up chicken nuggets. We're trying to go out on a date, right? And then Paxton runs, not that this just happened in my house, runs to see Dexter pooping in the bath. He screams, then Dexter screams, now everybody's screaming, and the chicken nuggets, I'm sure, are radioactive at this point, probably growing legs in the microwave because I haven't got to them. And then somebody decides, hey, Daddy, where do babies come from? Right? Okay, that last question didn't happen. But you feel, right, as a parent, those high pressure situations, and then you get a question, you're like, just go away. That's not what God does here, though. He gets the why question. He tells Daniel, let's read the whole thing. Go your way, Daniel. What he means is live your life, Daniel. Be obedient, Daniel. You're not going to get all the answers. Right, like he tells him this. Go your way, Daniel. The words that are shut up and sealed until the time of the end. What is he telling him there? This is not the idea that Daniel's prophecies will be secret. Clearly, they're not secret. Why? They're written down in your Bible. He's not saying shut it up because you need to put a lock on your diary. Don't let people see it. He's not saying it's secretive. What he's saying is it's not yet. The people who really need to feel this, understand this, and will get this in all its detail, it's for them later. It's not for you now. This is how God works with his people. Even the first coming of Jesus Christ, they didn't understand it. They didn't get it. They had hints, they had ideas that were pointing in that direction, but the details were lost on them. It's not till Jesus Christ came, they saw him do his miracles, they saw him die, they saw him rise again, that they said, this is what God meant. Because nobody anticipated the Messiah would be God. Nobody anticipated the Messiah would die. Nobody anticipated the Messiah would be resurrected. They got all those things after they happened. They had a picture, they had a glimpse. It's like they had a puzzle, but they were missing half the pieces. So they could see a little bit, but they were missing it. And they didn't have the box top that showed them the complete picture. What he's saying here is you won't get the full picture until it's that day. And then you'll realize this is why I gave this to you. So Daniel, you don't need to understand. And I'm not going to answer. Just obey. He makes this point even more. Look at how he shows that God shows in two other ways how obedience is the primary thing. Look what he says, verse 10. He says, many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. What is he saying there? Here's what's going to happen in the end. The obedient will get more obedient. The disobedient will get more disobedient. The righteous will live more righteously. The wicked will pursue more wickedness. What's the point there? What is he saying to us? Obey. Obey. When you're in this trial, when it's hard, when it's rough, you know the end, obey. Just obey. I'm not here to give you all the answers. I'm not here to clear away the uncertainty. I'm not here to speak into the fog and let it be clear to you your path and your direction. Just obey. Right? Another way he shows this to us. Look at verse 11. This is one of the most highly debated portions of Daniel's book. And I think the reason it's debated is because God keeps it unclear. I don't know what God is trying to do here. But I think his point is not to give us an answer, but to do what? To show us obedience. Look at this. Look at these numbers he gives. Verse 11. And from the time that the burnt offering is taken away, apparently this is what the Antichrist does. He takes it away. He robs the people of their worship. And the abomination that makes desolation is set up. So now the Antichrist somehow defames and kind of disregards and dirties the temple. Okay, we don't know exactly how that's going to happen, but it's going to happen. He says the distance between these two dates, there shall be 1,290 days, which is over 3.5 years. Okay, so well, why? He didn't tell us. Then look at the next number. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1,335 days. Why? What happens 45 days after that? There is 1,000 guesses. Guess what? Nobody knows. But what is his point? His point isn't to reveal, let me tell you what happens at day 1,335. What does he say? Hey, if you get there, good for you. What is he telling him? Get there. Keep running. Make it through the 3.5 years. Whatever's on that day, I don't know what it is. I don't think we're told what it is. But we'll know when it's there, and we'll be thankful when we get there. What's the lesson God is trying to teach Daniel? Obedience over answers. Now just apply that to yourself. How is your obedience when you are in a time of uncertainty? Like, do you struggle to be faithful when there's chaos around you, uncertainty around you? Do you almost leverage your prayers with God? If you'll answer this, if you'll make this clear, if you'll make this easy, then I'll obey. Do you flip the equation? Answers, then I'll obey. Or when you get a lack of answers, a lack of definition, a lack of clarity, is that when you say, well, God's not worth obeying right now? When are the times you struggle most to be faithful? My guess is it's when you are facing uncertainty. I tell this phrase to my kids all the time. And I think it's a phrase that God is telling Daniel. I think it's a phrase that God is telling us. My kids will oftentimes ask the why question. They're inquisitive little beings. When I lay out a plan, when I lay out, hey, here's what's going to happen, here's how the day is going to be, and they don't understand it, and they don't get it, they respond with, why? And sometimes I answer. Other times I say this, and they know this. They feel like this is tattooed on the top of Daddy's forehead. You don't need to know why to obey. Just obey. The key ingredient to obedience is not clarity. The key ingredient to obedience is not certainty. The key ingredient to obedience is not understanding. The key ingredient to obedience is decision. I will do this. I don't get the rest of this, but I will do this. I think this is such a poignant thing for us to learn, just even in our American climate. Everybody's getting nervous. We're hitting 2020. And what happens in 2020? The Lakers win the NBA Finals. Besides that, election. Everybody's nervous. Everybody's worried. Everybody's anxious, even more than the last time. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican or another party, everybody's nervous. Everybody's on edge. Everything is uncertain. Chaos is swirling. However you define it, I'm not making a political stance here, but I think I can easily describe the political climate. Nobody has certainty. Nobody feels safe. Everybody feels threatened. Everybody feels worried. It'd be really cool if God would just tell us what's going to happen and why it's going to happen. But is he going to do that? No. What is he going to tell you to do? Obey. Be faithful. I know it looks chaotic, but I'm in control. I know the story seems to be spiraling, but I'm in control. Just obey, and I'll work everything else out. I encourage you, as it gets heated, as all the talk comes out, ask yourself, God, how can I be obedient right now? What do you want from me right now, God? How can I be obedient? How can I stop worrying? How can I stop being anxious? How can I stop insulting your sovereignty with my worry? How can I trust you? How can I obey you? God, show me that. May I be found faithful, God, even in the midst of the chaos. Now, maybe you're here and you're not a follower of Jesus Christ. You're still kind of processing all this stuff. You're trying to put all the pieces together. Man, friend, I have to tell you that ending of the road trip that Daniel is given, when he speaks about everlasting blessing, everlasting life, but he speaks about everlasting shame and everlasting contempt. Friend, if we're honest with you, this is the fate of those who don't follow Jesus. And it is a terrifying thing and is something we don't wish on anybody. We would regret to see anybody face that future, anybody to know that. And I know that sounds, when you first hear it, well, you can't judge me, you don't know me, you don't know my life, and you're right. You don't know I do these things, I'm a good person, and you know what? You're probably right. You probably do more good than I do. But friend, that doesn't matter. What does it say? Is your name written in the book? Not, have you done enough good? The scales don't work like that. And friend, you don't want them to work like that. Because the closer you get to Jesus, the closer you get to the scriptures, the closer you get to the things of God, you realize the resume you thought was so great is actually a rap sheet. It doesn't impress anybody. It only welcomes punishment. It's actually not that good. In fact, it's more like filthy rags, as Isaiah would describe. Our good deeds aren't pure. They're not good. They don't always have great motives. And there are the secret things in our hearts and the secret thoughts in our head, and all those pile up. And friend, when your deeds are put on a scale, let me tell you, it favors not the side you want it to favor. And that is true, and it is deafening, that judgment. And it is fair for God to say, everyone will see me as judge. And everybody will wear their own shame. Not a shame I force on you, but a shame you have willed yourself into. And it is just for him to send us into a fate that is hard to look at, that is contemptible, that makes us want to just cower from, to shudder from. Worse than any tragedy known in human history is the culmination of God's wrath on those that don't follow him. It is a scary and a frightening thing. But the beautiful thing is that it doesn't have to end that way. Your name can be written in the book. And how? Not because of what you do, because of what Jesus Christ has done. He can write your name in that book if you would believe in him, if you would trust in him, if you would go to God and say, God, I'm not impressive, I'm not good, but Jesus Christ is good. He lived a perfect life. He died the death I should have died, and he rose again, and now he gives me this gift of eternal life. So I receive it, I take it, I believe it. I don't obey to it, I just believe it. Friend, I want that for you so incredibly bad. Would you believe in Jesus Christ today? Let's pray. Father, we love you, and we thank you for who you are to us in Jesus Christ. We thank you for the love that you shower upon us, the grace that you so wonderfully give us. God, we are just enthralled with the end of the story. God, that you would bring us to a place of everlasting life, a place of everlasting joy. But God, there is the sobering reality that the end of the story isn't as beautiful and comfortable for everyone. And God, that scares us and terrifies us. But it's not our fear that draws us to follow you. It's your love. Your love to say, I'll take that on for you. I'll die that death. I'll face that shame. I'll face that contempt. Christ, when we looked at you, the wounded, bruised, ridiculed man, the Son of God abandoned by the Father, when we look at that, when people saw that, there was contempt. They had to look away. It was too gruesome. It was too bad. It was too horrific. But you were taking that on so we wouldn't have to wear that contempt. We wouldn't have to wear that shame. God, if there's anybody in this room today, God, they want their story to end with the beauty of knowing you, loving you, being held by you. enjoying you forever. God, I pray that they would receive you today. If that's you in this room, I want to lead you in a simple prayer, very simple prayer. It's not magical because of the words that come out. It's meaningful, though, if it comes from your heart. If you want to place your faith in Jesus Christ today, I would invite you to pray this prayer and mean it. Mean it in your heart. Surrender your life to God. Between you and God, you can say something like this. You can say, God, I see that I need you. Oh God, I see my shame. I know my guilt. God, I could list it before you. But God, I see that you provided for the forgiveness that I need. That you've given me the gift of Jesus Christ. That his death and his resurrection are payment for my sin. And God, I see that all I must do is receive this forgiveness and follow you for the rest of my life. So today, Jesus, that's what I'm doing. I want to receive your forgiveness. I want to commit my life to following you the rest of my life. It's in Christ's name I pray. Amen. Church.